they're using our democratic rules against us. They've been in the system for a while, and they're like a little baby. They are seeing how far they can go.
Do you believe that European leaders right now believe in victory?
I think some of them have some doubt. We learned the lesson by now that massing of forces, such a large forces along your borders, it's not just the flexing of muscles.
What happens if Russia attacks, and who can be trusted to help Europe fight back? From NATO boss Mark Rutte wishing good luck to those who think the continent can defend itself without America, to Donald Trump doubling down on his pursuit for dominance of the Western Hemisphere. Europe is facing an uncertain road ahead. But does that mean self-defence or bust? Tonight, I go on the record for an exclusive interview with Lieutenant General Piotr Błazeusz, Strategic Advisor to the Chief of the Polish General Staff and former Commanding General of the multinational Eurocorps force. Good evening, General. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Aaron. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be here.
Can I start with a really simple question? As we sit here tonight, do you believe that Europe is able to defend itself without the United States?
I think we should first ask the question, is the Europe willing to defend itself, and whether our political masters have the belief in victory. As a military, I have both. Then it's obviously always a political mindset, political decision. So I think we are able to do it together, and Ukraine is the best example. Think about when Russia started this unprovoked war, the full-scale war. What was our thinking about how long the Ukraine can defend itself? We're giving them a week or two because of the perceived Russian might. Right now, the duration of the war in Ukraine has just surpassed the duration of the so-called Great Patriotic War, Russia against Germany. Speaking about the Great Patriotic War, I think it's worth also mentioning for our viewers that the war for Russia, for the Soviet Union at the time, started on the 17th of September 1939, when they, as a result of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, decided to attack and make an aggression on Poland, and later on the Baltic states and then Finland. So actually, at the beginning of the war, the Soviet Union was in full cooperation with the Nazi Germany. So they were the actual aggressors, and only later on, when they were aggressed in 1941 as part of the Barbarossa Plan, they switched the sides.
Do you believe that European leaders right now believe in victory?
I think some of them have some doubt, but I believe that they are not taking into account the example of Ukraine, that if there is a will, as I said, and this belief in victory, we can do it together, because we have the proper resources, we have the capabilities that we can use together. It's just that we need to use them smartly. And I also believe very strongly in those transatlantic relations, because I'm a military, so I'm not part of these political discussions, which are sometimes heated, which are taken at the face value. I strongly believe that if Russia makes this stupid decision and miscalculation that they can try to take on Europe, U.S. will come in force with those especially so-called niche capabilities, because they also understand that if somehow Russia is able to take on Europe, then combined with China, it will turn against the U.S. immediately. While I have to add, and this is my personal theory, that once they are able to take on the U.S., then there will be a war between Russia and China.
Right, okay. I guess you mentioned the US coming in to help. I guess it is a question of trust right now, right? About whether or not America would come to the aid of NATO's eastern flank, including Poland if Russia crossed into Europe. Is there any planning, is there any thinking from the Polish armed forces right now of what would happen if America did not come to back them?
I would say formerly I was a strategic planner, so you always need to have the main plan and then the so-called branch plans, which actually take into account that the plan doesn't go as we have planned. So it's natural to plan for all different scenarios, potentially including this one. But I'm a strong believer that the US, first of all, will not leave us for the moment. Yes, they will be downsizing the physical presence of the boots on the ground, but still the critical capabilities will be here and will be available to us. I'm talking widely about the Europe. Poland is often said or presented as an exemplary ally because we're a serious security provider right now and security contributor instead of just the one that takes it for granted. Look at our defense spending, right? We're a champion right now in NATO. We are the best example that it's possible to get done. It's always difficult, obviously, to smartly spend that money, but I believe we are on a good track. We are defending our borders, meaning ours. I also mean that this is a European Union border and the NATO border against this, I call it state-sponsored migration. We have this Operation Podlasie, we have the Operation Secure West, we have the Operation Bay, its goal is to protect critical sea infrastructure. We have the Operation Horizon to support. In the other cases, it's the support for the border guard. In this case, it's support for the other security services in Poland to help secure the critical infrastructure inside Poland. So actively, daily, there's about 10,000 soldiers that are involved, 7,000 in those operations that I mentioned in Poland, and 2,500 roughly, again, the number fluctuates, are either in NATO, EU organizations, missions, operations, or other formats, for example, under the UN flag.
And I want to talk about those soldiers in just a moment. So are you saying that when it comes to the backup plan, there are backup plans that Poland is making in the event that America would not turn up to help?
It's natural. I mean, you always, don't discuss the details, but you always have, different plans shelved that if anything happens, depending on how the situation unfolds, you pull out this particular plan or branch plan, and then you adjust it to the situation. It's always good, as we all know, to have a plan, and if necessary, use it. But again, I have no doubts that the US will be with us if bad things happen.
I want to play you some clips from NATO's Mark Rutte and the EU's Kaja Kallas, who have weighed in on this in recent days. Let's have a listen to those.
And if anyone thinks here, again, that the European Union or Europe as a whole can defend itself without the US, keep on dreaming. You can't. We can't. We need each other.
Europe must step up. No great power in history has ever outsourced its survival and survived.
So typically, General, who do you agree with, if either of them or maybe both? Mark Rutte says Europe is dreaming about defending itself without America. Then you've got the likes of Kaja Kallas, who says no great power in history has ever outsourced its survival. Well,
I strongly believe, again, that we need both organizations, the NATO and EU. As you know, I've been the Eurocorps commander before, so I saw it at this tactical and operational level, how both organizations are working. And I have to say that we tend to forget that there is not such thing as a NATO army or EU army or UN army. It's always national forces, which are, after the political decision, being put for to be utilized by one of those organizations. And then we as soldiers put the NATO flag, UN flag, or EU flag. EU does not also have the most critical two pieces that you always need for any successful operation. This is the command and control structure, contrary to the NATO. And it doesn't have a well-developed communications and information systems. On the top of it, there are no really set up standards on the EU side. So on the EU side, we have to use what NATO has set up. And I think this is correct, because the way I look at these sort of organizations, I strongly believe in a convergence between the two. Both have a great role. We just need to maybe think more that in case of any war, open war in Europe, what would be the actual role of the European Union? Because we know that NATO will be the one that will be fighting this war, and that makes sense. This is what it has been designed for, and we just need to make sure that EU also fits nicely during this period, so that together, converging, we can face off any type of conventional threat.
So let's talk about any potential threat. And you mentioned your extensive military planning experience earlier. I do want to scenario build a bit with you. We hear about a potential Russian attack on European soil in the coming years. What would you expect that to look like? I mean, are we talking about a full boots-on-the-ground invasion? Are we talking about a cyber attack, about just drones in the sky?
So I think, first of all, we need to remember that Russia is constantly assessing our reaction to the hybrid warfare for the moment.
And so that includes reaction speed, right?
Yes, speed, procedures, political reactions, right? And obviously they are testing the system all the time. And I strongly believe that this testing is not over. And every time when they assess, they probably will decide, okay, can we go a step further and or not? For the moment, with those hybrid activities, because they are below the threshold of Article 5 in NATO, because they are hard to prove where they are coming from quite often, and Russia always denies this, prove it that it's coming, or it has been, inspired by us. It's extremely difficult, and they are playing in this gray zone quite well. They're using our democratic rules against us. They've been in the system for a while. And they're like a little baby. They are seeing how far they can go. So potentially, if certain conditions occur, they might make this miscalculation and this decision on conducting some sort of a more conventional attack. For the moment, we're not there yet, and I don't think they are able to execute it for the moment.
Do you see any evidence that Russia has been deterred? So it's obviously trying, it's pushing the boundaries, but that there have been incidents where Russia has gone, oh, wait, actually, we need to pull back here, or we need to stop doing this?
Well, I think this drone incursion showed that our response was very resolute and
But Poland also had to use really expensive equipment to shoot those drones down, right?
True, but you use what you have at hand, right? That's the point. It's not about the cost. It's about that, okay, we have to show that we are able and ready to respond. So we have learned our lessons from this incursion, and now we are adjusting our air defense systems, and we are developing and quickly fielding as many counter UAS systems as we can. So that's one of the examples, I believe. We have luckily no more missiles that wandered into our airspace, right? We had this diversion/sabotage on the railway, right? So luckily it was this one. So now we are much more alerted. We have created a system of better overwatch over our critical infrastructure. Same with our blue pipeline, for example, right? We're also protecting it much better than before. So for the moment, unfortunately, we're a little bit reactive, just like the whole West and the whole Europe. And I'm a strong believer that we should create all sorts of strategic dilemmas for the Russian side. Stop talking about this escalation, because actually Russia is the one that's escalating. I keep saying this, that this is not us. We should not worry whether in reaction, if we do something, whether it's escalatory or not. I mean, we should show that we are ready to, just like Minister Sikorski said, if you come back again, okay, don't be surprised that we'll shoot you down. And that's the case. That's the type of message we should be sending, that we're prepared, and if you do it again, our response will be appropriate, right?
When it comes to any potential Russian incursion or invasion over onto NATO's eastern flank, I want to briefly touch on Estonia and Narva in particular, because most of the population there is Russian. It's right on the border. It's viewed as a kind of weak point of NATO. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, there are a number of those, let's call it soft spots, that potentially Russia can use, and Latvia is not the only country where you have either this type of minorities, because they are now showing even in Poland that they are using all sorts of proxies, right? Quite often they have some of the people that were involved in the either espionage, sabotage, or diversion in Poland, they were actually the holders of the Ukrainian passports. Different stories with how they obtained this passport, but this is how Russia is trying to complicate our relations with Ukraine as well. Recently, yesterday, I think our security, our counterintelligence has arrested a Russian spy inside the Ministry of Defense. So they are willing and able to recruit different people. Sometimes the recruited ones are not even aware who they're working for, right? They're paid with usually crypto bitcoins or something like this, so it's very difficult to trace. And that's what Russia is, and probably will be doing. And we just have to be better prepared, build the resilience of our country as much as possible. Our society is very agile, needs to have the situational awareness and be able to quickly report suspicious activity, so the appropriate services, including military, can react.
You referenced Latvia. I talked about Estonia. Kalle Masala is a German political scientist. He wrote a book titled If Russia Wins. Now, TVP World spoke to him last month, and this is what he told us.
There are some soft underbellies of NATO, and these might be cities where there is a Russian minority living in. So this is a perfect pretext for Russia to say, their rights are oppressed, we need to protect them, and then we move in. So we have these kind of cities. We have them in Norway, we have them in Estonia, and we have them in Latvia. So therefore, I'm not quite sure where he's going to attack. Yeah, if he's going to attack.
If he's
going to attack. But he needs a pretext also. He needs a pretext for the international community, and he needs a pretext for his own people. So places where Russian minorities are living or Russian-speaking people are living are the perfect pretext. So it might be somewhere in the Baltics. It might be also in Norway.
Kalle Masala mentioning there the soft Russian underbellies and Vladimir Putin targeting those underbellies. How does the West, how does Poland respond in that instance, if there is that targeting of those Russian underbellies, to start a movement that then ends up in kind of a full-scale invasion, let's say? Map it out for me. What is the thinking?
Well, first of all, I think what's important is the full-scale invasion will not happen overnight. He needs to mass the forces, he needs to prepare the logistics, he needs to build up the field hospitals, bring the blood, and so on and so on. So that's one thing that we just need to make sure we closely observe and don't miss those signals, as he did in Ukraine, because he was positioning those forces for a long time, and after a while we got used to this and we considered that this is just a show of force, while he actually at certain moment decided that he can quickly take over Ukraine. He was misled by his intelligence services that Ukrainians will actually welcome the Russian, let's call them liberators, but they made this mistake. So I think that...
Could we make the same mistake again?
I think we learned the lesson by now, that massing of forces, such a large forces along your borders, it's not just the flexing of muscles. So you just need to not only tete-a-tete do exactly the same, of obviously, yes, prepare and then show them that we are ready, but also think about the strategic dilemmas in a completely different part of the world where potentially we can also upset our opponent.
I want to show a map of the so-called Suwałki Gap that's between Belarus and Kaliningrad. How do you view this corridor? I mean, could Russia use it to cut off the Baltics from the rest of Europe?
Well, let's look at the map. So what's important is we are concerned about the gap. But on the other hand, when you look at the Królewski Oblast, the part of now Russia, which became part of Russia, remember, after 1945, Before it was part of Eastern Prussia. So actually it's not a large territory. So for us, with our capabilities, we can widen this gap. So it's not just the gap that we have to worry about, right? Plus, you can make different maneuvers on different sides if you are attacked. This is important. Because once you're attacked, I don't think there will be any discussion about escalation, about use of capabilities, about using the deep precision strikes, or entering the territory of the enemy that has attacked us. At that point, I strongly believe this discussion, we are past it.
A big question, if that happens as well, will be military mobility. Basically, the ability to get soldiers and troops to wherever they need to be, especially out in the east. How worrying is it for you that Rail Baltica, for example, this line designed to connect Warsaw with Tallinn, with Finland, has not yet been completed? And the deadline is 2030, which, when you have NATO's Mark Rutte warning that an invasion could happen in the coming years, that seems too late.
Well, the mobility is not just about the ground lines of communication. We also need to make sure we can freely use the sea lines of communication, but also air lines of communication, meaning the strategic airlift. And mobility is just one piece, and I think we've made a great progress on this piece in all the European countries. We're still having some challenges, obviously, with our bureaucracies. In Poland, it has been overcome, but there are other countries that are facing these bureaucracies on how fast they can issue a permission to move the hazardous materials, meaning ammunition, for example, or large equipment. But this is being worked through. But mobility is just one piece. What we have to remember is directly connected with the mobility is the piece of the so-called enablement. So you need to enable those forces to come in and do also the so-called reception stage and onward movement. Basically, that they are ready to fight. They need to pick up what they need. They need to zero their weapons and so on very quickly. So enablement, but then you have the sustainability, which is also a challenge because you need to make sure that all the forces that are present, that they're sustainable. And not only ammunition, we're talking about the food, we're talking about the water, we're talking about the medical support because soldiers get sick too, right? And on and on and on. And while on the top of it, it's always, this is our job obviously, you need to de-conflict because at the same time, some of the routes might be taken by the people that will be evacuating. Right? Some of the roads are necessary for functioning of the country. We cannot just close the roads for the military purposes. So this is all in the plans. This is all that we closely look at. We are improving this infrastructure. This is also about having enough the so-called heavy trailers, because some of our tanks in Europe are very heavy. So to transport them, you also need those trailers that can carry them. You need enough the train lorries to take them as well. You need the bridges that can sustain it, but also allow for the transport to go below. So these things have been identified quite a few years ago, when still famous General Hodges was the U.S. Army Europe commander, and these things are being improved. And made more fit for purpose. You sometimes see those signs on the side with a tank, and it actually tells you that particular bridge what weight and pressure on each wheel it can sustain.
General, I want to end, we're running out of time unfortunately, but I want to end somewhat where we started, because much of the talk when it comes to Ukraine is about these US security guarantees and the fact that once a ceasefire is struck, then there will be these NATO-style security guarantees for Ukraine. In 1939, Poland was failed by British and French security guarantees. These were legally binding military agreements. Why does Poland, why do you still believe in the principle of lasting security guarantees? Could not the same thing happen with NATO today? Well,
we also have to remember that the Budapest Agreement between Ukraine and the three other great countries have failed as well. Because they also, at that time when they gave up the nuclear weapons...
So do security guarantees work?
They do.
Or are they the best we have?
No, they do. But the question is, and we don't know the details, whether it's a fair peace, whether it's just a ceasefire for a moment, right? And the security guarantees, if you are going to provide them, expect that the Russians will test it. So they definitely need to be well thought through and credible. And there will be a lot of nitty-gritty details that Russians will be looking into, just like with the Minsk agreements, remember? They were in place, but they were constantly abusing those Minsk agreements and showing that there is nothing you can do to us. We can fire into the territory of Ukraine. We can kill some Ukrainian soldiers. We can make sure that OSCE is not able to perform its job, and so on. So it's a tricky business, but I strongly believe with the right planning and the will and desire of the countries that are saying, hey, we will provide you the security guarantees, that it's workable. Why? It's important because if for some reason those security guarantees, as you mentioned, some examples I gave some, will not work, Russians will take advantage of it, which means that the actual peace agreement would last short. They will use the time, and they will, again continue pursuing their own, let's call it, strategic objectives. And I think to understand Russia, we have to go back to this ultimatum that they sent to the Western countries in December 2021. In those over 20 points, they mentioned Ukraine only twice. So to me, Ukraine for them is just one milestone. And if they're able to achieve what they want to achieve with Ukraine, basically subjugate it completely, make it more like Belarus, fully dependent and reintegrated potentially in the future with the Russian Federation, then there are other milestones that they have, I think, presented in this ultimatum, because Mr. Lavrov also said, hey, we understand you don't agree right now for our claims, but we will continue pursuing those claims. And there are claims like, okay, NATO will never expand again. NATO will withdraw its forces from the new members after 1999, which means also, for example, Poland. So they really would like to completely remodel the world rule-based order, dismantle organizations like NATO. UN is already incapacitated by them, and then build their own alternative system, preferably just with the only superpower, the US, if possible, and then divide the whole world into their own spheres of influence. That's, I think, their dream, this new imperialistic dream, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I think we're doing quite good job at it.
And Donald Trump is also trying to bring back the spheres of influence. Lieutenant General Piotr Błazeusz, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And that's all for this edition of On the Record. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Dahmen. We'll see you next week.